Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. I'm here with Kenny Squared. Kenny Roger Maris, who's, by the way, still not in the Hall of Fame, was the last to do this. And I'm going to butcher his first name. Is it Wilmai Abreu with the Red Sox? Did I say his first name right?
Oh, I think so.
Okay. He hit a grand slam and an inside the park home run in the same game. Do you know how many inside the park home runs were hit all of last year?
Like four, maybe.
Yeah, I mean you're close, eight, but that used to be a kind of regular occurrence. Now I think you'll only get them in these ballparks that are quirky, like Fenway Park is still quirky. If you saw it, it bounced off the fence and then bounced the other way past any of the defenders. That was against the Reds. But
Um,
great
you
achievement.
know, you know who the last one before him was to hit a inside the park home run in Fenway?
No, who?
Yankee legend Jacoby Ellsbury.
Really? Okay. But he was with the Red Sox when he did it.
Yeah.
You would think some of these guys that are really fast would have more inside the park. I'm sure Ricky Henderson had quite a few inside the park home runs. You would think that that would happen more often. Clayton Kershaw, did you see this? He got his 3,000th strikeout last night. Big deal?
Yeah, like he was already a Hall of Famer, but it's about seal
Yeah.
the deal. He's only the 20th player ever to do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like how the Dodgers have treated him. There's no way they would let him walk away. For years, he's been rumored to go to Texas because that's where he's from, but the Dodgers keep signing him to contracts as long as he can pitch. So, hey, listen, Jurickson Purfar, I probably butchered his last name, Jurickson Purfar, um, was activated last night and played for the Braves after an 80-game suspension. He can't play in the postseason, though. But you know who they designated for assignment to make room for him?
another Yankee legend, Alex Verdugo.
I mean, what happened to him? He started off great and he just fell off the map. I mean, just he started off great this year and he fell off the map, but his career started off great. I am surprised that he's still pretty young. I think a team will take a chance on him, but boy, oh boy, that surprises me. We have got a lot to talk about, right? We've got the Knicks have their new head coach. We're going to get into a lot of baseball all-star rosters, or at least the all-star starters. Dave Parker passes away. Wanda Franco gets his sentence, which is just awful. A lot to get into. You ready to get this going?
Let's get into it.
This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers! Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, we have so much to get into. Let's start in the NBA. It was a big week. Wasn't a ton of big free agents, but a lot of really interesting moves went on. I want to, as the Knicks announce, or they will announce that they've hired Mike Brown as their new head coach. I want to ask you a question. Do you remember who the head coach was before Tom Thibodeau?
Was it Hornacek?
No,
It wasn't. Was it Fizdale?
no.
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Mike Miller. Do you remember Mike Miller?
Oh, I forgot about him.
Yeah, they hired him. He finished the season when they fired Fizdale, and then they let him go a full season. And he interviewed for the job, but he didn't get it. He's kind of disappeared. I don't know if he's still coaching anywhere in the NBA, but um, so I wanted to make that point because I think most people are on the same page as us, and I'm gonna let you just go ahead and talk and vent here. But I'll just say my opinion real quick. Mike Brown, I think, is a good coach. Um, but I think our friend Tim said it best when he said it's an underwhelming hire. But I think if Mike Brown had gotten hired after Mike Miller, we would have been pumped up. but he gets hired after Thibodeau, one of the best coaches in Knicks history, I think, even though, Red Holzman is the only one that won championships. And there's been some, really good coaches with Pat Riley and Van Gundy, Rick Pitino, but he had a good amount of success in the 5 years he was here. So, your thoughts on the Knicks hiring Mike Brown?
Before I get to that, Mike Miller, I just looked him up. First of all, he won G League Coach of the Year for the Westchester Knicks back in 2018. Fun
Yeah,
fact.
yep, yep.
Um, and he was an assistant under OKC for a year. He's been an assistant under the Wizards for the last 3 years,
Oh,
and
okay,
is currently going to be an assistant under Sacramento.
okay,
So,
okay. So he's still coaching. I think
this,
probably a better assistant coach than head coach, but seemed like a really good guy. But I'm glad he's still working for sure.
yeah. As far as I think underwhelming is the right word, because I think Mike Miller is a good, not great head coach. Um, I don't think he's that marginally better than Thibodeau. I would say they're probably at about the same level. Um, so I do think for that reason, it just kind of seems like, well, that's what we went through. But I think that could be good for a few reasons. Um, we talked a few weeks ago, like sometimes when the head coach hire that kind of seems like, well, I don't really know that guy, or that kind of seems weird, usually fits well. Because look, if we ended up prying Jason Kidd away from Milwaukee, or not Milwaukee, Dallas, or if we took Ime Udoka, who why would he want to leave the Rockets? But from the Rockets, like everything would be focused around them. But now I think it can be focused around the players. And I think he seems like a decent head coach for this team. I think one of a couple of really big benefits, which kind of tells me a little bit, like Nick kind of texted about it, but I'll kind of double down, um, is that um, Mike Brown's more of an offensive minded head coach, which might fit this team a little bit better. Like I know we have OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges who are excellent defensively, but Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, however great they may be, they are not good defensively.
Right.
So I think doubling down on a strength might kind of help this team get over the hump a little bit.
Yeah.
Because obviously Thibodeau didn't care about offense, and that's fine. Like that's his strength is defense, and I think this Knicks team played great defense when they needed to. Um, so I think having the offensive minded coach, especially when you look at how Indiana played, very offensively minded. When you look at OKC, although OKC was kind of both, I think that like you look at that and it's a possibility. I think the other thing is I think at some point we kind of have to ask is the ceiling very low for Mike Brown? However, I know that the floor is very high. Like
Mhm.
he's not gonna this team isn't gonna be a 17-win team next year.
Yeah.
Like they'll make the playoffs easily, I think. So I think that that's probably a good thing because especially in the East next year when Halliburton's hurt, when Tatum's hurt, when there's still questions as to whether or not Giannis will still be around this time next year, um, I think you have to say, let's try to keep the status quo as much as possible and kind of go through. I do think at this point the Knicks aren't going to make a major move. I think their major move was having a coach that's more offensively minded to try to help garner up a little bit more offense. So I think that's part of it. Also, they said that they really liked Mike Brown's like player relations, which tells me more and more that part of the reason why they fired Thibodeau wasn't necessarily because of his success, but because players were starting to feel like he was too hard on them.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. The pendulum swings back and forth. If you had a really hard head coach, you usually get more of a player friendly head coach the next time. Like I thought earlier today, I was thinking about it with the Yankees, where Joe Girardi was super harsh on his guys, would publicly call out Gary Sanchez, Dylan Betances regularly. And
Yeah.
now you have Aaron Boone, who probably is a little bit, we could talk Yankees later, but he's probably a little bit too much on the player friendly type of coach
Yeah. Yeah.
or manager. But I think that could also play a good factor in making sure some of these guys do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the biggest things, though, is Mike Brown, please play the bench. And I think he will, because like Thibodeau runs these guys to the ground.
Well,
And I don't think Mike Brown's gonna do that.
yeah, we saw that take effect in the Indiana series for sure. I agree with everything you said. Well, because he's our guy now, I want to be positive. There are some positives about Mike Brown. I had to look this up though because they kept saying that he was fired 4 times. I'm like, I can only count three. I've forgotten this, and maybe you did too, that after he got fired by the Lakers, the Cavs brought him back, but he only lasted a year back with the Cavaliers, and he got let go by the Cavs twice. He had some success with the Cavs, right? He took them to the finals in 2007. No one expected them to get there. That was LeBron just lighting up Detroit in the conference finals series, but then they got swept by a formidable San Antonio team. I liked what he did with Sacramento. In fact, I think when we came on when he got fired, I think we both said we didn't think that that was fair because the Kings had some injuries at the time. I mean, he had gotten them into turned that team around a lot. They hadn't been to the playoffs for quite some time, if I remember right, and he got them in at least to the play-in twice. And then it went south last year, but I didn't think it was fair. I thought they fired him pretty quickly. So you know, like I said, I think that, and I want to ask you this question because it's hard to get a step up from Thibodeau. As Thibodeau, I thought was one of the best coaches in the league. I think he had been in both, all his stops, right? Especially in Chicago, Minnesota. He had some issues there, but Minnesota, he brought them back to the playoffs also after a long time, if I remember right. And then we saw every day what he did with the Knicks. But we also know Thibodeau is not a big personality or, you know what I mean? He's gruffy. He's an old school coach. He's a little on the older side. I think he's 67, somewhere around there. Um, and Brown is a little bit younger, obviously, and has a bigger personality. But here's the question I have for you because, I mean, listen, they shot their shot with Jason Kidd, with Adoka, and Billy Donovan, all these guys that were under contract, which I thought was kind of a waste of time. Especially you got successful coaches, you're not going to let them walk away. And I'm glad the Knicks didn't push that because Kidd would have probably figured out a way to get out of his contract, right, the way he did with the Nets. But why didn't they talk to Mike Malone? I mean, you have our Budenhauser. I'll throw him in there too. They didn't even talk to either one of them. And I'm just, is it because they felt Malone was kind of almost like Thibodeau, kind of personality lined up? And last thing I'll say, I want to hear your thoughts, is that there's some pedigree there because Brendan Malone had Nick Roots for years. God rest his soul. I think he died a year or so ago. Brendan Malone was a assistant coach through several coaches with the Knicks and was very successful. I think he was their radio guy for a short stint as well. Um, and he was also assistant coach with Chuck Daly, if I remember right, with the Pistons for a long time. So Mike Malone is his son, and Mike Malone is from this area, from New Jersey. I mean, at least give him a phone call. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they probably thought he was too similar. Because also Mike Malone kind of got fired for the same reasons that
Yep.
Thibodeau did.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they were a little worried about it. I'm surprised they didn't at least give him a call.
Yeah.
Budenholzer too. I don't know. Maybe he also is kind of the same way. I don't know. Um, it does seem kind of weird. This whole head coaching search to me was kind of weird
It was.
because like first all you're doing is like hitting up teams that already have head coaches and be like, "Hey, can we take your head coach?" Which like
Yeah.
that seemed weird.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, it's Mike Brown, and then it's like nobody else.
Yeah.
Like he's the only one that got a second interview. But I think it's part of the I trust this regime that they kind of feel like they didn't need to make that big of a change in the head coach. They just needed a little bit of a tweak there, especially looking at the landscape of the East. I think next year they're like, we do everything right, we could be in good position because I believe right now the Knicks are the betting favorites to win the East.
Oh yeah. Well, let's get into that. And last thing I'll say, I think Brown will be much more engaging with the media. He's a different personality. He likes to chat it up. he's a basketball lifer as well, like Thibodeau was. But I guess that's why they didn't go for Mike Malone because Mike Malone's a little gruffy as well. And we see Denver making a lot of changes there. I think really good changes actually for them. But I think that I think Brown will be successful. It's just, the initial thing is we were expecting more. I think, and that's not just us feeling that way, the fans. I'm hearing that, from some of the media as well. And but Brown's well respected too. So you won't hear the media putting him down because they know that he knows how to coach. He's been a good coach. It's just I think we were expecting more after you let go of Thibodeau. Thibodeau's not a Hall of Fame coach by any stretch, but he was one of the better coaches in the league for the last 5 years for sure. Actually, a lot longer than that. So you mentioned that they're leaning on the offense. So they signed Jordan Clarkson, which I thought was an outstanding, kind of under the radar. I think they got him for just the mid-level exception. So and they don't have much money available unless they trade some guys, which I don't think they're going to do. I think you run it back with this team and we'll get to how Indiana is even less, I think, right now, formidable than they were last year. They get the guy from the Sixers, who I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but I do remember him watching him, and he seems to me a pretty good player. And kind of while he's a big guy who crashes the boards, he's a good offensive player too. So it seems like these first couple of moves really shores up the bench a little bit. I could see this guy replacing Precious Ochua, who I liked, but really didn't play that well the second half of last year, nor in the playoffs. But Clarkson, I think, is a really, really good pickup. So, what did you think of the moves the Knicks have made thus far?
I agree. I think they're good moves because it's not like once again, it's not trying to upset the boat. We're not trying to do something crazy. We're not trying to overhaul the roster, which like if you were getting a Giannis, if you were getting, I don't know, a player that like I wouldn't even say getting a LeBron because I wouldn't overhaul the roster for
No,
LeBron at this point in his career.
no, no.
Um, but like I think the biggest issue was the Knicks bench. You could tell towards the end of the playoffs that like the starters were getting gassed and there was never like that shot in the arm. But the teams that made it the furthest, Indiana and OKC, the biggest thing for them is that they play a 9, 10 guys. And I hope that not only having a better bench, but also having a coach that will actually utilize his bench will
Yeah,
make a difference. Because like even you look at the Lakers and they had both Luka and LeBron, but they couldn't get out of the first round because like they only really played their starters. They
yeah,
literally only played their starters in a total half.
yeah.
So I think it's good moves, and I really hope that they don't do too much more.
I don't think they will. I think that the starting five plus either Mitchell Robinson or Josh Hart, I don't think they have any inclination to move any of those guys. You mentioned LeBron, and there was that rumor that that's why they brought Mike Brown in. I mean, 2010 was a long time ago. I'm sorry that the ship has sailed. And listen, I feel blessed and privileged to have watched all of Michael Jordan's career, all of Magic Johnson's career, Larry Bird's, and now seeing LeBron's career, all of it. And this is yours. You've seen him as well, all of him. It's the time has passed, and he's still a great player. But how many more years is he going to play? 1 or 2 years, and he signed for $50 million. You would have to send $50 million in players back, meaning that Karl Anthony Towns and probably OG would have to go back to the Lakers. If you wanted to bring LeBron in here, and then now you've stripped the team and forget it. I want to get to the Pacers for a second because they lost Miles Turner. I've always liked Miles Turner, even from college and he's just always been a clutch player, solid player. I thought he would have been the type of guy coming off the bench with the Knicks. That would have been great. Or you could have started him, but the Bucks sign him. But that I think that strengthens the Bucks. We'll get to Damian Lillard in a second, though. I think that strengthens the Bucks. But what does that do now for the Pacers, man? They're without him as well as Halliburton next year.
Yeah, we say it all the time. Sometimes those windows close quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's closed shut for them because they still got Pascal Siakam
I've got a lot of good players. Yeah.
and and they have a great coach.
Yeah,
I feel like they need to make a move, but I don't know what that move would be.
yeah,
Um, I hope that they don't because I don't want them to succeed next year. But um, I think for two teams now, I would say the Pacers and the Celtics. Take the gift of a devastating injury and turn it into a lottery pick.
yeah,
Tank. I know, like they try to discourage tanking. Like if I mean, you look at the Celtics, they already traded away Porzingis, they traded away Drew Holiday, and they'll be out. They'll lose Jason Tatum for the year. The Pacers. Now you've lost Miles Turner. Halliburton's gonna be out for the year. You might as well just try to make the most of this season. Because especially like what move would be out there for them? There really isn't like a high profile free agent, and also like it just doesn't really seem like there's that other guy there.
yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah. No, I agree. I think that, you talk about windows closing. I think the Knicks window is wide open next year. And, it's a shame. It's because part of it is because of injuries. I think the Knicks would have been the favorite in the East anyway. Um, but I think now with some of these injuries, they're certainly going to be the favorite in each, which is going to add some pressure there. I don't know that we got a chance to talk about the Kevin Durant to the Rockets trade. What were your thoughts on that?
Um, Kevin Durant is probably like the is he the best player that's been like moved the most?
Yeah.
Um, I mean maybe Shaq too, but
Yeah, towards the end.
um,
It's moved like every year. You're right. Yeah.
and like I think for him it is kind of like a free play because if he succeeds with the Rockets and they actually win a title or they get back to the NBA Finals, it'll be like a pretty big achievement for him, especially since like he hasn't been back since the Warriors.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those Nets years, like
Yeah.
the closest he came was having his foot on the line in that big game against Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Other than that, like he hasn't really had a big playoff moment. He hasn't really gotten his team back to that point. Um, However, I think the biggest thing for him is he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Um, if uh, if he stays healthy, that team can be very good,
Yeah.
especially with Ime Udoka. I think he can bring out a little bit more of the defensive side of Durant, who's also pretty decent defensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Van
they
Fleet.
were the second they were
Yeah.
the second seed last year. They
Yeah.
could do it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned the Lakers. You had texted me, should the Knicks go after Ayton, DeAndre Ayton, who was cut pretty much by Portland. I kind of understand how he did it, but I was like, yeah, stats. He actually had a couple of really good years there in Portland. Um, was it a couple or was he just here this one year? I don't remember. I thought he was there for 2 years, but um, the Lakers needed a big man. You saw that in the playoffs last year. And one, they landed a pretty good big man with Ayton. What'd you think about that move?
It's a move that they needed to make.
Yeah,
Um, it they needed a big man desperately, especially like in the playoffs last year. Their biggest guy was basically LeBron, and LeBron isn't that great on defense anymore. I think like Aiton doesn't need to score; he just needs to be defensively minded, and he'll be good.
yeah, 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 absolutely. That Mark Williams from the Hornets trade fell through for them. You just kind of knew that they wasn't going to go far in the conference without a big man. You're right; they didn't have anybody. All right, that brings us to one more thing I'll throw at you. I'm always down. I hate to say this, but I'm always down on Kristaps Porzingis. I hated the way he left the Knicks. I thought most of that was his fault. That um, he kind of thumbed his nose at their training staff and his brother put down the Knicks and they almost backed him into a corner and they dealt him. But he was hurt a lot and he was. I can't blame him this past playoffs where he had this mystery illness thing. And I'm not saying it in any sort of way. I totally believe he was ill, he was sick. But when he's healthy, he's such a unique, very good player. He's not a superstar. like I think the Knicks thought we thought he would be, but he's developed into a very solid player. Now he goes to the Hawks, and Trae Young is still there, and the Hawks made some really good under the radar moves, although losing Clint Capella, and he went back to the Rockets, by the way, which I think is one of those underrated moves that's going to work out great for them. But what do you think about the Hawks now? I think they took a one or two notches up in this trade season, as well as the Nuggets.
Yeah, the Hawks might be one of those teams where it's like, wait, they're in the playoffs again?
Yeah,
Um, but I don't know. How many years have we said Trae Young is probably going to get traded?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Other than him terrorizing the Knicks a few years ago, can we start talking about him not really living up to the expectations? He's never
yeah.
really taken that next step.
No,
Um, but they could be back in the things this year. Um, the Nuggets too. I think they've made a couple of good moves. I mean, we had said the Michael Porter Jr. trade kind of seems like it's the same person.
yeah,
But I
Cam
think if
Johnson. Yeah, yeah,
I do think if you with the new head coach, I know the West is tough, but you still have the best player in the NBA.
yeah,
And also getting rid of Russ, I think will help. That is the other thing we haven't talked about. The
yeah.
rumors of Russ going to the Knicks. I don't think it's going to
Not
happen
gonna happen.
now,
No,
um,
yeah,
which I'm glad because
yeah.
he has not like since every team that he's gone to over the last several years, he's made the team worse,
Yeah.
and that's got to be something.
Maybe, yeah. And I like Westbrook still, but he never adjusted his game. He still hasn't adjusted his game. He still thinks he can outrun and outjump everybody, but he can't anymore. Um, they added back Bruce Brown. I think Cam Johnson is a better player than actually Michael Porter Jr. I think they kind of have the same. They're similar bills, right? That he's tall, lanky, forwards who shoot a lot of threes. I've always liked Cam Johnson. I think he's a winning ball player, and I think that he was wasted here a little bit with the Nets. I think he gets into that system that he's going to be firing jump shots all over the place because Porzingis will get him the ball. And I love that they brought back Bruce Brown. That was another one of those under the radar moves. Who I'm not sure why they let him walk. He was just phenomenal in the year that they won the championship, So I think that those were a couple of the under radar moves. Last thing I want to ask you about in the NBA, Damian Lillard. The big rumor is that he wants to close out his career with the Warriors. And now, obviously, it would be a little bit to wait for the Warriors. I gotta think he'll want to go to a championship contender, but the Warriors, that's where he's from. He's from Oakland. And so, where do you think Damian Lillard would land? And if he lands with Golden State, where does that bring them? I mean, we have to wait a while to see him, right? And we have to wait a year. But what are your thoughts on Lillard?
I feel like if he lands in Golden State, it'd be unfair. Because like think about it, they would have Steph Curry, they'd have Jimmy Butler,
Yeah,
Draymond Green, and Dame Lillard. I know some of those guys are old, but still, like they wouldn't need to be the number one star. You still have Steph Curry. Um, I don't know. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint a place. I think that probably makes sense, him going to Golden State.
yeah,
I feel like the Bucks kind of did him dirty, but he's also getting paid, so I don't think
yeah.
that's that big of a deal.
I can't imagine. They said Giannis was not happy the way it was handled, but I mean, I'm sure the Bucks didn't call him out of the blue. I'm sure that there were conversations, that happened. I think, Bucks also lost Brooks Lopez, who had been really good for them over these last 7 or 8 years. I think that he'd been there. Um, but I think that the Bucks wanted to free that money up so that they could do a few other things. They brought back Bobby Portis. And so I'm sure that with Lillard, I'm sure they had some conversations with him, but I think it was the right move for them actually, especially with him being hurt. So, and they kick that money down the road so that they can sign some players, which tells me they're probably going to keep Giannis, at least through the trading deadline. But Lillard to Golden State, oh my gosh! And if I look forward to that, that team would definitely be making one more championship run. And they might make a run this year with Jimmy Butler there the whole year. Now, there's a short window where Jimmy Butler will be happy and say, "Trade me, get me out of here," But I think they can get a couple of years out of him. All right, let's switch over to baseball, Ken, and we'll talk about a couple of stories before we get into the Mets and Yanks, and we'll be relatively fast here on these stories. Dave Parker passed away this past weekend. Actually, the game it was announced before the Met game on Saturday or Friday. One of them. I just turned to the Mets and they were talking about it. The Pirates obviously had announced it. Spent a lot of his career with the Pirates. Won the MVP there. Won a championship there in 1979. And he just got into the Hall of Fame. And this is where I know we talked about his stats when he went into the Hall of Fame with Dick Allen, who also has passed away. But at least Parker knew he was going in. Dick Allen passed away before he even knew he was going in. Um, but a lot of people have been asking, and this doesn't get brought up. I think there was a reason why Parker wasn't in, um, because there was this big drug scandal in the mid '80s in baseball with cocaine and Keith Hernandez, who they never. That's one of the reasons I think he's not in. Tim Raines, who I eventually got in, was involved in that, as was Dave Parker. But Parker was just an amazing dude. I sent you, I think you've seen those clips before, but I sent you those clips of why he was the MVP of the '79 All-Star game, even though my guy Lee Mazzilli hit a pinch hit, three-run homer to tie that game. That was back when only one Met would make the All-Star team. But you got, I mean, the throw to the plate, Gary Carter's tag on Brian Downing. And then look at Jim Rice. You see how players hustled in the All-Star game. Parker loses the fly ball in Seattle there in the Kingdome. And a guy who's not fast, Jim Rice, is trying to stretch it into a triple. He makes an unbelievable throw. That's Ron Say of the Dodgers at third base, who tags out Jim Rice. Parker was an amazing player. Real quick, so he was the 1978 MVP. He had a great year that year, 30 homers, 117 RBIs. He batted 334. And a guy that big, he stole 20 bases. He won a title again with Oakland towards the end of his career, next to last year of his career. He was the primary DH. And so in '89, so he won titles 10 years apart. But that year as the DH, he had 22 homers, 97 RBIs, batted 264. He could still hit. But one of the things that got overlooked, and I think I talked about this before, when the Pirates didn't bring him back, and part of it was that scandal. Part of it was that the Pirates just couldn't afford to bring him back. He signed a 4-year deal with the Cincinnati Reds. But he had some of his best years with Cincinnati. They never talk about it because the Reds were just an okay team at that point. '85, he had 34 homers, 125 RBIs, and he batted 312. Now, think about it now. He started in '73, so he's in his 30s when he's with the Reds. In '86, he had 31 homers, 116 RBIs, batted 273. And even his last year with the Reds, '87, he had 26 homers, 97 RBIs, and batted 253. So Parker was an amazing, amazing, consistent player. Certainly a very friendly, gregarious guy, larger than life figure. Certainly will be missed. Your thoughts? I know you didn't get to see him play, but you heard me talk about him enough. Your thoughts on Dave Parker?
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. Another All-Star game highlight, because we were watching the Roku Sports Network game. It was the Guardians against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And Dave Parker hit a home run in the 1981 All-Star game
Yep.
at Cleveland Municipal Stadium.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they were showing the highlights of that.
Yeah.
It stinks when like the guy dies and he's not able to actually go to the Hall of Fame speech and all. But at least he had the satisfaction of knowing that he was a Hall of Famer before he passed. So
Yeah.
it'll be kind of one of those bittersweet type of moments for him. I mean, same if Pete Rose ever gets in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely a legendary player though.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so let's switch over to Wanda Franco. We didn't get a chance. We talked about that case a lot. Kenny, is there more? I mean, even just talking about it, I feel dirty. I mean, is there more horrible case that we've read about in sports? Trevor Bauer stuff was a little tough for us to cover, but with Franco and this 15-year-old girl, I'm sure she's older now, right? She's probably about 17 now, that he was with. So the case finally wraps up. And I asked you, I didn't know what it meant. He got 2 years but the sentence was suspended because I guess he's already served 2 years. So did I read that right? That he's not even serving any prison time for this?
Yeah, he already served it,
It's already
basically.
served. I mean, that's how do you only get 2 years though? I guess laws are a little bit different in Dominican Republic, and the mother deservedly so because we read a lot about that, right? Of what the mother did. She knew about it. She took the money. She took a car, from Franco, and she set a lot of this up. She got 10 years, where Franco gets to kind of walk free. Now he's not free because he ain't playing in the major leagues again. I'm sure, and you're sure about that too. But what were your thoughts on as we wrap up this terrible story?
Yeah, it kind of seems like instead of going after the guy that had all the power and had at one point the richest contract in Rays history, I guess that won't count anymore. Instead of going after that guy, the guy that had all the power and the authority, they go after the mom. Um, and like, yes, the mom is an evil lady and deserves every single day in prison that she gets. Uh, but I think also Wander Franco must have played a big role. Like, if if that was something that happened with like a celebrity here in the United States, like you're talking a lower developed country like the Dominican Republic, and this guy is giving you an opportunity to receive a lot of money. Like it just kind of, I don't know. It just That's what bothers me too. Is just like the way the justice system did not work there. Um, but yeah, he's not playing baseball again. I can almost guarantee that because they say that it'll be very hard for him to get a visa. I would assume because of these serious charges, they probably like the United States isn't going to grant him a work, especially in the climate that we're in nowadays, where the goal is not to have like people like that in our country. I would be stunned if he could get a work visa. And even if he did, I'm sure the Rays are figuring out a way to avoid that contract. And I'm sure that any other team will not even come close to touching him.
No.
Um,
If
if no one's going after Trevor Bauer, they're not
Yeah,
going after him.
there you go. Yeah, if Trevor Bauer, hasn't signed with anybody, and he was never charged with anything, and Franco was charged and found guilty, um, there's no way that any team is going to let him play. It's a sad story, it really is. You just hope that the young lady gets to live her life in peace, and that she found the right way in her life. I mean, there's nothing written. I couldn't find anything written about her. Maybe there will be one day, but and they should respect her privacy. So, all right, now let's talk to what's happening on the field. Francisco Lindor finally makes an All-Star team as a Met. This is his fifth year with the Mets, and there's been
Wait,
several
this is his first year?
first year making an All-Star game with the Mets.
Wow.
Well, he was making it every year with the Guardians. So that was a good thing. I don't think there were any big surprises. I think I sent you that, Pete Crow Armstrong and Javi Baez both, make the team after that Met trade 4 years ago. Baez, I'm really happy for him. And Armstrong is developing into a star and happy to see that as well. I did not see that. I mean, he came up with the Mets once or twice, and I was like, he just seems like an okay, guy, but he's developed into a star. Before we get to the Mets and Yankees, and I want to emphasize more on the Yankees, just as we're tomorrow is July 4th. The Mets is 2 games behind the Phillies in the East. The Dodgers now have opened up an 8.5 game lead now on the Padres. As the Giants have, went into a slump, and the Padres can't get out of their own way. Um, the Cubs have a 3 game lead on the charging Brewers. Hopefully, the Mets stop them a little bit more today, as the Mets won the second game in that doubleheader yesterday. I think it's over in the AL Central. The Tigers have a 12.5 game lead on the Twins. Um, as you talk about the Yankees, I'm going to ask you to weave in what the heck is wrong with the Guardians. They're 4 games under 500 and seem to be out of the race at this point. Your favorite team, the Astros, has a 7 game lead on the Mariners. And I think that's only going to grow unless the Mariners make a couple of moves. But here in the American League East, Kenny, and this is what I'm going to turn it over to you as to what's going on with the Yankees. They're now tied with the Blue Jays today, and the Rays are only a half game out. Both those teams have gotten hot. Um, and while the Yankees have stumbled here, both the Mets and Yankees had a June swoon. The Mets worse than the Yankees. and it was a crazy game last night. You text me that they were down 8-0 and tied it. It was 9-9, but the Blue Jays wound up winning with 2 runs in the bottom of the eighth, 11-9. So weave in what's happening there with the Guardians, but what is going on with the Yankees, and what are we going to see here as we're past the second half now? But what are we going to see here from July forward with the Yankees?
Well, I'll tell you this: we're gonna see like the saddest Subway series ever. Um,
That's right. It's this week.
I have this stat up. The Yankees have lost 13 of their last 19. The Mets have lost 14 of their last 18.
Yeah.
Like they're both stumbling into a
Brutal.
series that kind of both of them need. Um, what fears me with the Yankees is their upcoming schedule the most. Because I'm going to pull it up, and yeah, it's scary. But as I'm pulling it up, it kind of seems like they just haven't been able to click because a few weeks ago it was their offense was just being bleh. Like no one's scoring, everyone's in a slump, which like I know that happens, and that's why like you kind of that's part of like the ebbs and flow of the season. Like it happens. And then so then like the offense starts clicking. And now the starting pitching really hasn't done that great. And then last night, like they're down 8-0 because Will Warren, who like he's a rookie, he's bound to have these type of games. Gives up 7 runs in the first inning. Yankees fight all the way back, and they're tied, and they go to Devin Williams in the eighth inning.
Huh.
He hasn't pitched in the eighth inning, I don't think, since early May, and gives up just like a single, or he gives up a double, and they walk Vladdy, and then like I think it was like a ground ball, fly ball to the right side, moves the runners up. Oh, it was a fly ball to the right side, moves the runners up, and then a wild pitch, and then another base hit. And
Wow.
it's like the most like disgustingly low
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
rally. But um, I do think there are signs that things are starting to turn around. Um, but here's their schedule here in the month of July. So they're wrapping up with Toronto tonight, which I don't think they've won a game yet in this series. Um, and then the Mets. Wow, those are weird times. I'm just looking at that. 4th of July, 3 o'clock, okay. And then Saturday at 4, they're not the Fox game, and Sunday at 6, they're not the ESPN game. That's rare.
Sunday at
Um,
6 p.m. That's a weird time. Yeah. I don't remember them starting at 6 p.m.
4 p.m.
Oh, 4 p.m. on Sunday?
Oh no, one on Sunday. Sorry,
Oh, one on Sunday. Okay. Okay,
I was
gotcha.
looking at Saturday.
Gotcha.
Um, so after the Mets, they come home to Seattle, and then Chicago, and then All-Star break, and then they got the Braves, the Blue Jays, the Phillies, and then the Rays for 4.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And then it gets easier in August, but that's their schedule in July. And that's what scares me. Like at Seattle, they handle them pretty well usually, but Chicago is really good. Atlanta is always like I feel like they're gonna beat them because I feel like they always do. Obviously, the Phillies are tough, and then the teams that they're now fighting for the division. I think the biggest thing too is Anthony Volpe. Something needs to be done about him. People like cut him, cut him, cut him. I don't think that needs to happen. I think he needs a day off. Um, I'd mentioned last week about Joe Torre using Scott Proctor all the time and how that's Mark Leiter Jr. for Aaron Boone.
Yeah.
Um, I think also for whatever reason he plays Anthony Volpe constantly. The guy never has a day off. Um, but then like when he actually has like I think what's with it's all mental with him. He has I think it's 11 errors now.
Wow.
Um, in one of the game, I think it was the Monday night game. He had 2 horrible errors. Um, one he was throwing to third base Jazz, which that's also an issue we could talk about. Um, he was throwing to third base Jazz, throws it away, runners score. And then it was a throw like it would have been a tough throw to make, but then like overthrew it, which caused the runners to advance. Um, and then after the game, they asked him like, "Do you think you should have made those throws?" And he said, "Yeah." And it's like I feel like there's no self-awareness there. I think he's very much in his head, and I think Boone just needs to give him like 2 days off. But
Yeah.
like that's not really the Boone way. He just kind of lets them do their thing and tries to help let them figure it out. But like, because we saw that with Gleyber Torres, where like he was just so much in his head, but then like you give him some time to just kind of recalibrate. You give him a day off, and like he had a great second half last year, and now he's the freaking second base all star for the Tigers. Like
Wow. Yeah.
they they got to figure out something. I still think they desperately need an infielder. I want to see them get a third baseman so that they can move Jazz back to second base.
Right.
I think that'll solve a lot of the defensive problems. Um, but yeah, another thing that I read is apparently the Yankees tried to DFA DJ LeMahieu because like he's been bad. I'll pull up his numbers, but apparently the veterans of the team, probably primarily Judge and Stanton, have kind of blocked that multiple times.
Wow.
And I don't know how I feel about that because, like, Judge, you're a great player, but you're not the GM.
Right. Yeah.
Stanton, you're a great player, but you're also not Aaron Boone. Like,
At,
all right,
at
he's got
some
a
point, at some point, Cashman will do that if that's what he wants to do. He's giving him a little bit of grace right now. If LeMahieu doesn't turn it around and he feels he should be DFA'd, he'll do it.
yeah, he's batting 254 with a 333 on base, 331 slug. He's hit 2 home runs, 12 RBIs.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been past his prime, unfortunately, for a little while, right? Every once in a while he gets a big hit, but he's been past his prime for a little bit. What do you see the Yankees doing at the deadline? I know it's less than a month away now. What do you see the Yankees doing?
Um, I see them. I see them getting an infielder somewhere. Obviously, like my hope would be that the Cardinals like fall apart and then they want to trade Arenado, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to happen. Um, but I do see them going after a third baseman. Um, but it is hard to kind of pinpoint who that is. Also, they probably need another bullpen piece. Jake Cousins was supposed to be like one of the guys coming up from the ranks. He now has he's now undergone Tommy John surgery, so he's done. They don't really have like a guy that is back in there. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that like they need another arm just in that bullpen. I'm not really worried about the rotation. The rotation will figure itself out. Stroman looked pretty good on Sunday. Um, Yarborough will be back. He'll probably be more of like a swingman. Clark Schmidt's been good. Rodon, Fried have been great. So I
Yeah.
think that the rotation will be fine. But they definitely need at least another arm in that bullpen so that
Yeah.
you're not going with Mark Leiter Jr. every time you need a big out.
Yeah.
Um, he's been pretty good, but like at some point his arm will fall off.
Yeah. Well, yes. The Yankees will turn it around. I think that's going to be a close race, though. I think that the Jays have turned the corner, and the talent is finally, coming to fruition, which they've been underachievers for a couple of years now. Um, and Tampa is just who they are, man. But they've got some good young players that can hit. It's almost like this more their offense than their pitching. Which in the past, it's always been their pitching that's been great. Um, I'll give you a quick minute on the Mets, and then we'll get to inspiration. Um, it's been a full failure, man, with the Mets. This has been awful. I mean, they stopped hitting, they've stopped pitching, they've got injuries. Even their defense was a little shaky. So, good sign last night with Lindor hitting. Mendoza switched to the top of the lineup. He put Nemo back to hitting first, and Lindor hit second, and it worked out because Nemo hit a grand slam last night. Lindor hit a home run. I Mets have the talent, but I just David Stearns is really hesitant to take back on money again, and I think Luis Severino is a no brainer. But he did sign a pretty big contract, for 3 years with the A's, and I think at this point, I've kind of changed my mind on Jacob deGrom. I think at this point, Texas would be crazy to trade him because I think that he's he's back pitching to the way that he could carry that team the way he used to with the Mets. You need more than one great starting pitcher, but I think he can keep them in this race. I mean, there's still one game under 500, I think, but they win 8 out of 10, something like that. They'll be right back in the race. And deGrom won again last night. He pitched 6 scoreless innings again last night. I mean, he's back to being where he was, before the injury. So I would ride that out as long as I can. Now, if the Yankees or the Mets or the Dodgers knock on the Rangers' door and they give them a boatload of prospects, Texas may have to think about that, if they're still sitting at 8, 9 games out, but I suspect that they'll keep him. But I don't think the Mets will get in on that. I think that Severino is probably the smartest way to go. He was here. He had really good success last year with the Mets, and but because they need Sean Manaea pitched well last night. His rehab start. I think he has one more, and then we could see him activated. Senga's at least a month away from coming back. McGill hasn't even started baseball activities, so that starting rotation's in a bit of shambles. And it's been showing. So, but I do think the Mets will turn it back around. It's going to be interesting to see who takes 2 out of 3 or sweeps this weekend because they both have been playing bad. But we'll see. Hopefully, momentum will take them in. And I don't remember this is the first time in a while, right? They played on like a 4th of July weekend. I kind of like this. This is good. I'm surprised it's not on national television, but that's fine. I don't really care. Um,
Yeah, I like hearing the local guys because
yeah,
like we
yeah,
should get that with the Red Sox too, where it's
yeah,
like I want to hear Michael K call this game,
yeah.
not Mac Vasgersian or Joe Davis or whoever.
Yeah, both very good broadcasters, right? We like both of those guys, but yeah, I'd rather hear local announcers. I was watching a World Series highlight from probably 1974. I remember what it was. It was Herb Washington um, when he was the Oakland A's signed him as a pinch runner. That's all he did. He was a track star, and he got picked off when he pinch ran in the World Series. Yes, Oakland A's, they were very innovative in their time. They put him on the roster. It was for at least one year as a pinch runner. That was it. That was all he did. He never hit. He just pinch ran, and he stole a lot of bases that year because he was extremely fast. But in the World Series, he got picked off right in the spotlight in a big, big spot. The A's wound up winning that World Series. That was against the Dodgers. That was the third of 3 in a row that they won. But my point was, I think that might have been the last year where NBC would have the home team announcers do like 3 innings, and they would be in the booth with Kirk Gowdy and Tony Kubek. So, for instance, for the Mets in '69, Lindsey Nelson was their announcer, and he announced it. So if you see some World Series highlights, you hear him on NBC. It was because they would always bring in the hometown announcer, and it would be whatever the home stadium is. So it was Monty Moore, I think, was the Oakland announcer in Oakland when he got picked off. Anyway, ready for some inspiration?
Yeah, a quick
Yeah.
side note here. Sunday night, they're doing a doubleheader.
Oh, really? Wow.
Cubs Cardinals at 6, Rangers Padres at 9.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. I don't remember them ever doing a doubleheader on Sunday night. It's ESPN. I always thought covered baseball great, but they just stopped. There used to be a game on Monday nights, Wednesday night. Wednesday used to be a doubleheader. Fridays. Um, there was another highlight I saw that because I think it was the anniversary of this, and I watched some of those games. Um, Friday night doubleheader when Dave Stewart had a no-hitter, pitched a no-hitter against the Blue Jays. He was with Oakland. And then the second game of that doubleheader was Dodgers, maybe Phillies, and Fernando Valenzuela pitched the no-hitter in the second game, and both were on national television with ESPN. So they haven't done a doubleheader in a long time. Wow, that's interesting on Sunday night. They're going to losing baseball, obviously, and I think it's going to go to NBC. We'll see. NBC will have Sunday nights covered all year long with football, then basketball, and baseball. So we'll see. Um, Kenny, on yesterday, the same day, July 2nd, 1963, my inspiration is a little bit different, and I'll say it real quick. The Milwaukee Braves played the San Francisco Giants in what they're saying was one of the greatest pitching matchups of all time. Juan Marichal against Warren Spahn. You know both of those names. You obviously never saw them play. I don't remember seeing Warren Spahn play, but I do remember Juan Marichal. It's a great pitcher. And the game went 16 innings, and it was tied nothing to nothing. In the bottom of the 16th inning, Willie Mays hit a walk-off home run, and the Giants won 1-0. But the big deal about that game, if you look at the box score, there were only two pitchers, Juan Marichal and Warren Spahn. They both pitched all 16 games. And, they didn't keep a pitch count then, but since then, people have watched the highlights and have given a pitch count. Juan Marichal threw 227 pitches, and Warren Spahn threw 201 pitches. So, I mean, that is just amazing when you think about guys getting pulled after 80 pitches, today. And Warren Spahn, here's the last quick fact, and I'll turn it over to you for your inspiration. Warren Spahn at that time was 42 years old, and he pitched 16 innings, 201 pitches, gives up a walk-off home run to Willie Mays in the bottom of the 16th inning. One of the greatest pitching matchups of all time. It'll be hard-pressed to find another one where two pitchers went that long and went at it, didn't give up any runs, and never a relief pitcher came in. So that's my inspiration today. I think it's just an amazing story. July 2nd, 1963.
Wow. Um, yeah, that'll never happen today. If they go 9 innings, that'd be surprising, but let alone 16.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to take a little bit of a deep dive, very briefly, into Clayton Kershaw.
Yep.
Obviously, Kershaw, congratulations on 3,000 strikeouts. He's the 20th player ever to do it. Obviously, easy Hall of Famer. I believe he's now the fifth or fourth left-handed pitcher to hit 3,000 or to hit the 3,000 strikeouts. Was it? Because I think CC was the third, so he might be the fourth. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, Randy
But
Johnson and Tom Glavine.
yeah,
But
so I guess he is the fourth. Was
maybe
that?
Glavine didn't get 3,000. I know he got 300 wins. Um, we'd have to look that up. But anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to detour you.
But obviously, Clayton Kershaw, one of the things that we know him for is his strong faith. I believe he is a Roberto Clemente Award winner
Yep.
for a kids camp, a kids Bible camp that he operated back 10 or so years ago. Also, recently, I was looking it up this morning, and apparently he has a biography out. And someone had put together an article. I'll send it to you so you can put it out there about some of the highlights of his faith that was mentioned in this biography. One is that his relationship with his wife and high school sweetheart is what really reshaped his faith, as she was a really big part in him becoming a stronger Christian. He has always seen his baseball ability as a gift from God. And he feels like he believes that God is using him to steward that gift. He also believes that God doesn't care whether or not they win or lose. Because he says that he figured the other team was praying just as hard as he was.
Hmm.
And then also last year, right? So this article I think is a year old, but he spoke up very poignantly about a group, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which is like a group that makes fun of Catholic rituals. He came out and because they were honored at Dodger Stadium during its Pride Night a couple years ago. And so he felt like it was really important to at least step up for people of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times, and he also goes into a little bit of some of his crisis of faith where he's trying to still figure out how to be a Christian in such a public eye, because sometimes that can be very challenging. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a strong Christian. I'll send you the article.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is from 2024. So, but good for Clayton Kershaw. obviously he's gonna just walk right into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah,
Um, at some point we should do a guys that will definitely be in the Hall of Fame if they retire today.
yeah.
That would be fun.
Love that. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Next
but
week.
that's
Yeah,
shout out to Clayton Kershaw.
absolutely. I love that. Love that. Absolutely. Um, we didn't do nicknames today, so maybe we'll do nicknames and Hall of Fame blocks, next week because there'll probably be not as much basketball news, or maybe we'll save some for All-Star Week where there won't be hardly any news at all. As Dave Parker's nickname was the Cobra. Um, I don't think Kershaw has a nickname, but at least not that we know of. That is awesome. That is awesome. I love that. All right, lots to get to next week. You ready to take us home?
Yeah, let's do it. Speaking of nicknames, the Big Dumper is a fun one too. But
I think that is
for
the worst nickname ever. I'm sorry. I would not
it's
want to be called
hilarious.
Dumper. I think that is the worst nickname ever. I mean, I'm sure Cal Raleigh, who's unbelievable first half. Um, but that's a terrible nickname. I'm sorry. This is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about nicknames in a couple weeks here. But this is Kenny Squared End
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.